Princess Valith Corin stood at the tall window of her private chamber and looked out at the stars. She was bored. She was always bored these days. The diplomatic meetings were dull. The courtly functions were predictable. The visiting ambassadors from other worlds spoke in careful words that meant nothing. Everything moved too slowly for someone who had lived for 400 years and would live for 400 more. The Selvari were the oldest and most powerful species in the known galaxy. They stood 8 feet tall, with silver skin and eyes that glowed like pale moons. They had built empires when other species were still learning to make fire. They had mapped the stars when humans were still living in caves. Valith had grown up knowing that her people were superior to all others. It was simply a fact, like the warmth of a sun or the coldness of space. But being superior was also very boring. Valith had developed a hobby to pass the time. When representatives from younger species visited the Imperial Station, she would find the most confident among them and challenge them to contests of wit and intelligence. She enjoyed watching them struggle against her mind. She liked seeing the moment when they realized they could not win. It was cruel, perhaps, but it was also entertaining. And entertainment was hard to find when you had seen everything the galaxy had to offer. Her attendants understood her needs. They kept watch for interesting visitors and reported back to her with details. Today, her chief attendant, a young Selvari named Mythis, came to her chamber with news. "A human delegation has arrived," Mythis said. "They are here for trade negotiations, 12 of them in total." Valith turned from the window. Humans. She had heard much about them, but had never personally tested one. They were a young species, barely 300 years into their journey among the stars. They were small and fragile and lived such short lives. Most of them died before reaching 100 years. It seemed almost sad to Valith. How could any creature accomplish anything meaningful in such a brief existence? "Tell me about them," Valith said. Mythis consulted her data tablet. "Most are diplomats and trade specialists, young, eager, well-dressed. But there is one who does not fit with the others." "Oh?" Valith felt a spark of interest. "A man sitting alone in the observation lounge, middle-aged by human standards. He wears plain clothes with no markings or symbols of rank. He has been there for 3 hours, just watching the stars and drinking something the humans call whiskey." Valith smiled. A loner. Someone who kept to himself. Those were often the most interesting targets. The loud and confident ones usually broke quickly, but the quiet ones sometimes provided a real challenge before they fell. "His name?" she asked. "The station registry lists him as Daniel Cole. No title, no official position in the delegation. He may be an advisor of some kind, but there are no records of importance attached to his name." Perfect, Valith thought. An unknown. A nobody. She would have her fun with this Daniel Cole, and when she was done, she would move on to the next distraction. She gathered her entourage and made her way to the observation lounge. The lounge was a grand space with curved walls of transparent crystal that offered a view of the surrounding nebula. Beings from a dozen different worlds sat at tables, or stood in small groups, talking and drinking and conducting the endless business of galactic society. Valith's arrival caused a stir. Conversations paused, heads turned. The princess of the Selvari Empire did not often visit public spaces. She spotted the human immediately. He sat alone at a small table near the far window, just as Mythis had described. He was not impressive to look at. His hair was dark with streaks of gray. His face was lined with age. He wore a simple jacket that had seen better days. A glass of amber liquid sat in front of him, half empty. He did not look up as Valith approached, even though her shadow fell across his table. "Human," she said, her voice carrying across the lounge. "I am Princess Valith Corin of the Selvari Empire. I wish to speak with you." The man looked up slowly. His eyes were brown and tired. He studied her face for a moment, then glanced at the attendants standing behind her. "Good evening," he said. His voice was calm and quiet. "Can I help you with something?" Valeth was not used to such a mild response. Most beings became nervous or excited when she addressed them. This man seemed neither. He seemed only tired. "I have a proposition for you," she said. "I wish to challenge you to a game of Korath. It is an ancient Selvari contest of logic, memory, and mental endurance. I have played it against scholars and diplomats from across the galaxy. I have never lost." Daniel Cole took a sip of his drink. "That sounds impressive," he said, "but I think I will pass. Thank you for the offer." He turned back to the window. Valeth felt a flash of irritation. He had refused her, in front of everyone. She could hear whispers spreading through the lounge. The princess had been dismissed by a human nobody. "Perhaps you did not understand," she said, her voice growing sharper. "I am offering you an honor. Few beings are given the chance to test themselves against Selvari royalty." "I understood," Daniel said without looking at her. "I am just not interested." Valeth leaned closer. "I have heard that humans are a timid species. Perhaps the stories are true. Perhaps your kind is not ready for the challenges of the greater galaxy." The lounge had gone silent. Everyone was watching now. A Kellian merchant at a nearby table shook his head slowly, as if witnessing something unwise. A pair of Yggdrathi scholars exchanged meaningful glances. Daniel Cole set down his glass. He turned to face the princess fully. His expression had not changed, but something in his eyes had shifted. It was subtle, like a door opening just a crack. "I have spent 50 years trying to avoid situations like this," he said quietly. "But it seems some lessons need to be taught more than once." He gestured to the empty seat across from him. "Sit down, princess. I will play your game." Valeth smiled in triumph and took the seat. She did not notice the worried looks that passed between some of the older beings in the lounge. She did not see the Kellian merchant quietly leave, as if he did not want to witness what was about to happen. She only saw another victim waiting to fall. The game board materialized between them, a holographic grid of light and symbols. Valeth explained the rules with practiced ease. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he simply nodded. "Let us begin," Valeth said. The game of Korath was designed to break minds. It had been created by Selvari war masters thousands of years ago as a way to test the mental strength of commanders before sending them into battle. The rules were complex. Players had to remember patterns, predict their opponent's moves, solve logic puzzles under pressure, and maintain focus through hours of play. Most species gave up after the first few rounds. Even the strongest minds usually crumbled by the fifth. Valeth had played this game hundreds of times. She knew every strategy and every trick. She had defeated Yggdrathi scholars who had studied logic for centuries. She had broken Kellian merchants famous for their sharp minds. She had crushed diplomats from a dozen different worlds. The game was her weapon, and she wielded it without mercy. The first round went exactly as she expected. She moved quickly and confidently, setting traps in the pattern grid while watching Daniel's face for signs of confusion. The humans studied the board carefully before each move. He was slow, cautious. He made small mistakes that cost him points. By the end of the round, Valeth was ahead by a comfortable margin. "Not a strong start," she said with a thin smile. "Perhaps Korath is too advanced for human minds. Your species is still so young." Daniel said nothing. He simply waited for the next round to begin. The second round followed the same pattern. Valeth dominated the logic puzzles and predicted his moves with ease. The human fell further behind. Her attendants exchanged satisfied looks. The other beings in the lounge watched with mild interest, expecting the game to end soon. But something changed in the third round. Daniel's moves became faster, more precise. He stopped making the small mistakes that had cost him earlier. When Valeth set a trap, he avoided it without hesitation. When she tried to read his intentions, his face gave her nothing. He was like a wall of stone, calm and unmoving. Valeth frowned and pushed harder. She used advanced strategies that had broken scholars with centuries of experience. Daniel countered each one. By the end of the round, he had cut her lead in half. "Interesting," he said quietly. It was the first word he had spoken since the game began. The fourth round was brutal. Valeth threw everything she had at him: memory tests, logic chains, psychological pressure. She made sharp comments about human weakness and short lifespans. She reminded him that his entire species was still an infant compared to the Selvari. She tried to make him angry. She tried to make him afraid. Daniel did not react. He played on with the same steady calm. His memory proved flawless. He recalled every pattern from every previous round without effort. He solved the logic puzzles as quickly as she did. And when she tried to get inside his head, she found nothing to grip. It was like trying to push against empty air. By the end of the fourth round, they were tied. The lounge had grown crowded. Word had spread through the station that something unusual was happening. Beings from many different species had gathered to watch. Valeth could feel their eyes on her. She could hear their whispers. The princess was struggling against a human nobody. The princess was not winning. She felt the first cold touch of doubt in her chest. She pushed it away. This was impossible. He was just a human. He could not beat her. No one could beat her. The fifth round began. Valeth played with fierce determination. She abandoned her usual elegant style and went on the attack. Every move was designed to overwhelm him. Every decision was made to crush his defenses. Daniel absorbed it all. He did not fight back with equal force. Instead, he bent like water around a stone. He let her attacks pass by, and then quietly took the points she left unguarded. His strategy was patient and precise. He was not trying to destroy her. He was simply waiting for her to destroy herself. By the end of the fifth round, Daniel Cole was winning by 3 points. Valeth stared at the board. Her hands were shaking. This had never happened before. She had played Korath against the finest minds in the galaxy, and she had always won. Always. But now this quiet human with his tired eyes and plain jacket was taking her apart, piece by piece. "Would you like to rest?" Daniel asked. His voice held no mockery. It was a genuine offer. "No," Valeth said sharply. "We continue." The sixth round was a nightmare. Valeth made mistakes she had never made before. Her memory failed her at crucial moments. Her logic became tangled. And through it all, Daniel played with perfect control. He did not celebrate when he scored points. He did not smile when she stumbled. He simply moved forward, steady and unstoppable. By the middle of the round, Valeth realized something terrible. She was not playing against an ordinary man. She was playing against someone who had done this before, many times, against opponents far more dangerous than her. The round ended. Daniel was now winning by 7 points. 2 more rounds remained, but the gap was almost impossible to close. Valeth stood abruptly. "Intermission," she announced. 15 minutes. She walked quickly to the far side of the lounge, her attendants hurrying after her. Her mind was spinning. Who was this man? How could a human nobody be doing this? It made no sense. She was still asking herself these questions when an old voice spoke behind her. "Your Highness, we need to talk." Valeth turned. An elderly Selvari stood there, his silver skin faded with age, and his eyes dim, but still sharp. She recognized him at once. Counselor Dreth. He had served in the diplomatic corps for over 200 years. He had witnessed events that were now history. He had met beings who were now legends. "What is it?" Valith demanded. "I am busy." Dreth glanced across the lounge at Daniel Cole, who sat alone at the table, quietly sipping his drink. "Do you know who that man is?" the counselor asked. Valith felt her irritation rise. "A human nobody, a traitor or minor advisor. He is not important." Dreth shook his head slowly. His old face was grim. "That man," he said, "is perhaps the most important human alive, and you have made a very serious mistake." Valith stared at the old counselor. Her mind struggled to accept his words. The man at the table looked so ordinary, so unremarkable. He could have been any human from any small colony ship. There was nothing special about him. "Explain yourself," she said coldly. "Who is he?" Dreth took a slow breath. His old eyes were distant, as if looking back across centuries of memory. 70 years ago, I was a junior diplomat assigned to the frontier territories. The border conflicts had been raging for 4 decades. The Varakan Dominion had destroyed dozens of human colonies. Billions were dead. The humans were losing badly, but they refused to surrender. They fought on year after year, dying by the millions, but never giving up. Valith knew this history. The border conflicts were famous throughout the galaxy. They had been a brutal war between humanity and the Varakan, a warrior species that respected only strength. The Vorakans had expected the humans to break quickly. Instead, the war had dragged on for 40 terrible years. "What does this have to do with that man?" Valith asked. "Everything," Dreth said. By the 40th year, both sides were exhausted. The Vorakans had won most of the battles, but the humans had made them pay for every victory. Neither side could continue much longer. Peace talks were proposed, but no one believed they would succeed. The Vorakans did not negotiate. They conquered or they died. That was their way. Dreth pointed a thin finger at Daniel Cole. That man walked into the negotiation chamber alone. No guards, no weapons, no backup. He sat down across from the Vorakan High Command, 12 of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy, and he began to talk. Valith felt a strange chill run through her. "What happened?" "The talks lasted 19 days, Dreth said. 19 days without food, water, or rest. The Vorakan commanders tried everything. They threatened him. They tried to break his mind with fear. They offered him bribes and power. They told him they would destroy Earth itself if he did not give them what they wanted. And through all of it, he just sat there and talked, calmly, patiently, never raising his voice, never showing fear." The old counselor's voice dropped to a whisper. On the 19th day, the Vorakan war chief stood up, bowed his head, and surrendered unconditionally. 40 years of war ended in a single moment. The Vorakans, who had never surrendered to anyone, laid down their weapons and asked for peace. Valith felt her mouth go dry. "That is impossible." "I was there," Dreth said. "I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the Vorakan war chief weeping as he signed the treaty. I heard him call that man a name in his own language. Translated, it means the voice that breaks mountains. The humans had their own name for him." "What name?" Valith asked. "The Peacemaker." Silence hung between them. Valith looked back at the table where Daniel Cole sat alone, watching the stars through the crystal window. He looked so small, so tired, so ordinary. But now she saw something different. Now she saw the stillness in him, the patience, the weight of years and experience pressing down on his shoulders. "There must be some mistake," she said. "He cannot be that man. The border conflicts ended 70 years ago. He would have to be nearly 100 years old." "He is 93, Dreth said. "Humans live longer now than they used to. Medical advances, gene therapy, but even so, he does not have many years left. He came out of retirement 5 years ago when the Salvari human trade agreements began. Your father requested him personally. Valith felt the floor shift beneath her feet. Her father, the Emperor himself. Her father had asked for this man by name. Why did no one tell me? She demanded. Dreth gave her a long, sad look. Because you never asked, Your Highness. You saw a human and assumed he was beneath your notice. You did not bother to learn his name or his history. You simply decided to have your fun. The words struck her like a blow. She wanted to argue, but she could not. The counselor was right. She had not asked. She had not cared. She had seen only another toy to play with and break. What else has he done? She asked quietly. Dreth began to list events as if reading from a history book. 15 years after the border conflicts, there was a hostage crisis on Terrace Station. 40 armed separatists had taken control and were threatening to kill 300 civilians. Security forces were preparing to attack. It would have been a bloodbath. Daniel Cole walked in through the front door, unarmed, and talked for 6 hours. When he walked out, the separatists surrendered peacefully. Not a single shot was fired. Not a single life was lost. He continued. 20 years ago, the Yadrathi scholars presented what they called the paradox of endless night, a philosophical problem that had defeated their greatest thinkers for 8,000 years. It concerned questions of existence, consciousness, and the nature of reality. They considered it unsolvable. Daniel Cole heard about it during a diplomatic visit. He asked them to explain the problem over dinner. By dessert, he had solved it. The Yadrathi still teach his solution in their academies today. Valith listened in growing disbelief. Each story was more impossible than the last. During the Wraith incursion on Luna Colony, a crystalline alien species killed over 10,000 people in underground tunnels. Military forces sent to stop them never came back. Daniel Cole went in alone, with only a translation device. He made contact with the Wraiths and discovered they were not attacking deliberately. They were frightened and confused, stranded far from their home. He negotiated safe passage for them and ended the incursion without further violence. He was the only human to enter those tunnels and walk out alive. Dreth paused. He has been offered positions on the Galactic Council 3 times. He refused each one. He has been offered titles and honors by a dozen governments. He refused those too. He does not want power or fame. He only wants to help where he can, and then to be left alone. Valith turned back to look at Daniel Cole. He had finished his drink and was studying the game board, perhaps thinking about the remaining rounds. He looked up and caught her staring. He gave her a small nod, nothing more, and then looked away. She had challenged a legend to a petty game. She had tried to humiliate him in public. And now she had to go back to that table and finish what she had started. Her attendants watched her with worried eyes. Mythos stepped forward. Your Highness, perhaps we should withdraw. Claim an urgent matter. No one would blame you. Valith shook her head slowly. No, I challenged him. I will see it through. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked back to the table. Daniel Cole looked up as she approached. His tired eyes showed no triumph, no mockery, only patience. Ready to continue? He asked. Valith sat down. Her hands were steady now. Her mind was clear. She knew she would probably lose, but she would not run away. Yes, she said. Let us finish this. The 7th round began, and Valith played as she had never played before. Not with arrogance, but with focus. Not with cruelty, but with determination. She pushed aside her pride and her shame, and simply concentrated on the game. Every move was careful. Every decision was measured. She fought for every point as if her life depended on it. Daniel matched her move for move. He did not ease up. He did not give her false hope. He played with the same steady precision that had marked the entire contest. But something had changed between them. The game was no longer about humiliation or entertainment. It had become something else. A test. A conversation without words. Around them, the observation lounge had transformed. Beings from across the station had crowded in to watch. Word had spread through every deck and corridor. The Peacemaker was playing Korath against the Selvari Princess. No one wanted to miss it. Valith heard the whispers, but ignored them. She was deep inside the game now, deeper than she had ever gone. The patterns on the board seemed to shift and flow like living things. Her mind raced to keep up. Daniel's strategies were unlike anything she had faced before. He did not attack directly. He did not defend rigidly. Instead, he moved like water, flowing around her efforts and finding openings she had not seen. The round ended. Daniel was still ahead, but Valith had held her ground. She had not fallen further behind. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. During the brief pause between rounds, a Kellyan merchant approached the table. He was an older being with scarred hands and a face marked by decades of hard travel. He bowed respectfully to Daniel. "Forgive my interruption," the merchant said. "I was on Terrace Station during the hostage crisis. I was one of the civilians trapped inside." She was 7 years old. Daniel looked up at him with quiet attention. "You saved our lives," the merchant continued. His voice cracked slightly. "When you walked through that door, we thought you were mad. We thought we were all going to die. But you talked to those men like they were old friends. You listened to their grievances. You made them feel heard. And then you led them out peacefully, one by one." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal coin. "My daughter asked me to give you this if I ever saw you again. She is grown now, with children of her own. She said to tell you that she remembers. She never forgot." Daniel took the coin gently. He looked at it for a long moment, then slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Thank you," he said. "Please tell her I am glad she is well." The merchant bowed again and stepped back into the crowd. A Yggdrathi scholar came forward next. She was tall and thin, with skin like polished bronze and eyes that glowed with inner light. The Yggdrathi were famous for their intelligence. They had been studying the universe for tens of thousands of years. "I was present when you solved the paradox of endless night," she said. "I was a young student then. I had spent 300 years studying that problem without success. You solved it over dinner." Daniel shook his head slightly. "I did not solve it. I only suggested a different way of looking at it. Your scholars did the real work." "No," the Yggdrathi said firmly. "You saw what we could not see. You asked questions we had never thought to ask. The solution came from your mind, not ours. We have studied human cognition ever since, trying to understand how you did it. We still do not fully understand." She bowed deeply. "You showed us that wisdom does not belong to any single species, that even the youngest minds can see truths that ancient ones have missed. It was a humbling lesson, and we are grateful for it." She stepped back, and others came forward. A grizzled military officer who had lost his entire unit during the Wraith incursion, and blamed himself for years, until he learned that Daniel had made peace with the creatures, and proven they were not evil. A young diplomat who had read about the Treaty of Kethval in school, and had chosen her career because of it. A traitor who had been present when Daniel talked a pirate fleet into releasing their prisoners without a single shot fired. Story after story, life after life, each one touched by the quiet man who sat at the table with his tired eyes and faded jacket. Valith watched and listened. Each story struck her like a hammer blow. She had thought she understood the galaxy. She had thought she knew what power and importance looked like. True power was not found in titles or armies or ancient bloodlines. True power was found in the ability to change lives, to heal wounds, to bring enemies together and make them friends. This human, this small and fragile creature who would die in a few short years, had changed the course of galactic history. He had ended wars and saved millions of lives. He had solved problems that had defeated the greatest minds of ancient species. And he had done it all without weapons or threats or force. He had done it simply by talking, by listening, by understanding. When the last well-wisher stepped back, the lounge fell silent. Everyone was waiting. The final round was about to begin. Daniel looked at Valeth across the table. His expression was calm, but she thought she saw something in his eyes. Respect, perhaps. Or maybe just acknowledgement. "Shall we finish?" he asked. Valeth nodded. Her eyes burned with emotions she did not fully understand. She had come to this lounge looking for entertainment. She had found something else entirely. "Yes," she said. "Let us finish." The final round began. It was the longest and most difficult of all. The patterns were complex. The logic puzzles were brutal. The pressure was immense. Valeth gave everything she had. She pushed her mind to its absolute limits. She fought for every single point. Daniel played with the same steady calm he had shown throughout. He made no mistakes. He found no openings. But he also gave her no easy victories. Every point she earned through pure effort. The round stretched on. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3. The crowd watched in breathless silence. Even the most experienced beings present had never seen a game of Korath played at this level. 4 hours, 5, 6. Valeth felt her mind beginning to fray at the edges. Her thoughts were slowing. Her focus was crumbling. But she refused to give up. She would not surrender. She would see this through to the end, no matter the cost. Finally, mercifully, the game reached its conclusion. The board flashed once and displayed the final score. Daniel Cole had won by a single point. 1 point out of thousands. The smallest possible margin of victory. Valeth stared at the score. Her body felt empty. Her mind felt hollow. She had lost. But somehow, it did not feel like defeat. It felt like something else. Something she could not name. Daniel stood slowly, stretching his back with a soft groan. He was tired. Of course he was. He was 93 years old, and had just played 6 hours of the most demanding mental contest in the galaxy. He looked at Valeth, and offered her a small, tired smile. "Good game," he said. The observation lounge was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of what they had witnessed pressed down on everyone present. This had not been an ordinary game. This had been something more. A meeting between two worlds. A lesson delivered without lectures or sermons. Valeth remained seated at the table. Her mind was still processing everything that had happened. 6 hours of intense mental battle. Stories of impossible achievements. The quiet dignity of a man who had changed history but wanted no recognition for it. She felt as if she had been asleep for 400 years and had only now begun to wake up. Daniel Cole picked up his glass, saw that it was empty, and set it down again. He looked around the crowded lounge with mild surprise, as if he had only just noticed how many beings had gathered to watch. "Quite an audience," he said softly. Valeth finally found her voice. "You could have crushed me. You could have won by 100 points instead of 1. Why did you hold back?" Daniel looked at her with those tired, patient eyes. "I did not hold back. You are better than you think. You just needed to stop playing games and start taking things seriously." He reached for his jacket and pulled it on slowly, his old joints protesting the movement. "Besides, the point was never to humiliate you. That would have taught you nothing. The point was to show you something." "Show me what?" Valeth asked. "That you do not know everything. That your people, for all their age and wisdom, still have things to learn." That the galaxy is full of beings who deserve respect, not contempt. He paused. And that respect is earned through actions, not through titles or bloodlines. The words cut deep, but Valeth did not flinch. She had asked for it, the moment she approached his table with mockery in her heart. "Why did you agree to play?" she asked. "You could have simply refused. You could have told me who you were. I would have left you alone." Daniel considered the question for a moment. "Because you needed the lesson more than I needed my peace and quiet. I have seen beings like you before, Princess, young and powerful and bored, convinced that nothing in the universe can surprise them. It is a dangerous way to live. It leads to cruelty and blindness and eventually to terrible mistakes." He moved toward the window and looked out at the stars. The nebula beyond painted the darkness with soft colors of purple and gold. "I have made many mistakes in my life," he continued. "I have failed more often than I have succeeded. People remember the victories, but they forget the defeats. They forget the times I could not find the right words, the lives I could not save, the peace talks that collapsed despite everything I tried." He turned back to face her. "You will make mistakes too. Everyone does. What matters is what you learn from them. What matters is whether you choose to become better, or whether you choose to stay the same." Valeth stood slowly. Her legs were unsteady, but she forced herself to remain upright. Around her, the crowd watched in silence. Her attendants stood frozen, unsure what to do or say. "I owe you an apology," she said. The words were difficult. She had never apologized to anyone before. "Not truly. I treated you with disrespect. I tried to humiliate you for my own amusement. I was wrong." Daniel nodded slightly. "Apology accepted." "I want to understand," Valeth said. "How do you do it? How do you walk into rooms full of enemies and walk out with peace? How do you solve problems that have defeated entire civilizations? What is your secret?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "I listen," he said. "That is the entire secret. I listen to what people say, and I listen to what they mean. I try to understand what they want and what they fear. I look for the common ground, the place where both sides can stand together, and then I help them find their own way to that place." He smiled slightly. "It sounds simple, but it is the hardest thing in the universe. Most beings are too busy talking to listen, too busy defending their positions to see the other side, too busy being right to consider that they might be wrong." He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. "You are sharp, Princess. You have a good mind. You could do great things if you chose to. But first you need to learn humility. You need to understand that your long life and your ancient heritage do not make you superior. They just give you more time to make mistakes." Valeth felt something shift inside her. A wall that had stood for centuries began to crack. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Daniel shrugged. "Perhaps. The galaxy is large, but it has a way of bringing people together when they need to meet. If we do meet again, I hope it will be as friends rather than opponents." He nodded once to the crowd, then walked out of the observation lounge. The doors closed behind him. For a long time, no one moved. Then slowly, the crowd began to disperse. Beings returned to their tables or drifted out into the corridors. Whispers spread through the station. The story of what had happened would travel to 100 worlds before the week was out. Valeth remained standing at the table. Her attendants approached cautiously, unsure how she would react. Mythis spoke first. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Valeth did not answer immediately. She was looking out the window at the stars. The same stars that Daniel Cole had watched for hours before she interrupted him. She wondered what he saw when he looked at them. She wondered what thoughts passed through that remarkable mind. "I am fine," she said finally. "Better than fine." She turned to face her attendants. They flinched slightly, expecting anger. Instead, they saw something new in her eyes, something they had never seen before. "Cancel my engagements for the rest of the week," Valith said. "I have much to think about, and arrange a meeting with the human delegation. A proper meeting, with respect and courtesy. I wish to learn more about their species." Mythis bowed quickly. "At once, Your Highness." Valith looked back at the empty chair where Daniel Cole had sat. A legend had visited this place, a living piece of history, and he had given her something more valuable than any treasure in the galaxy. He had given her a chance to become better. She thought about his final words, about listening, about understanding, about finding common ground. She had spent 400 years looking down on other species. Perhaps it was time to start looking at them as equals. Perhaps it was time to learn. She left the observation lounge and walked through the corridors of the station. Beings stepped aside as she passed, bowing respectfully, but she barely noticed them. Her mind was already working, already planning, already changing. Somewhere on this station, an old human was probably finding a quiet corner to rest. He had no idea that he had just altered the course of Selvari history. Or perhaps he did know. Perhaps that was why he had agreed to play. The peacemaker, the voice that breaks mountains. Valith smiled to herself. She had confronted him for fun and found a legend. But, more importantly, she had found something within herself that she had not known existed. The capacity to grow. And that, she realized, was the greatest gift anyone could ever receive.